Okay, so this unit is going to be on skeletal system and joints. So a few important vocab words for you to get started. The first one is osteo. Anytime you see osteo at the beginning of a word, it means bone. Example, osteocytes are bone cells. You might also see os, ossy, oste. Any of those all mean bone. Chondro means cartilage, and arthro means joint. So the skeletal system consists of cartilage, bone, and ligaments, not tendons. Those are part of the muscular system. Cartilage, like we discussed in our last unit, is going to be in the connective tissue family. So the cells here are chondroblasts. If you remember, chondro means cartilage and blast means build. So they are building matrix, building cartilage matrix. There are different types of cartilage. There's hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fibrocartilage. We'll go through each of them. Cartilage is avascular, so if you see A at the beginning of the word, that means without, and vascular means vessels. So there are no blood vessels. So cartilage needs to rely on a process called diffusion in order to get nutrients and get rid of waste. Cartilage heals really slowly because of the lack of vessels. So individuals get like the top of their ear pierced, and that takes like 6 months to heal, versus if they get like the lower part of the ear pierced, that takes only a couple weeks because in that tissue there's a lot of blood vessels, versus up on the top of the ear is mostly cartilage, so there's not any blood vessels. So 3 types: hyaline, elastic, and fibrocartilage. We will go through each. On this picture you can see in teal blue, that's all the places that you see hyaline cartilage. And then in purple, like in the back, those are fibrocartilage locations. So hyaline cartilage is the most common. This is what it looks like here. It's kind of glossy looking blue. Each little white spot is called a lacunae, and then the purple dots within those are called the chondrocytes. Those are the cells. So this cartilage has the function to ease joint movement. So this you find at the ends of all of your bones that move. So this helps to kind of allow the 2 bones to like nicely slide against each other. Elastic cartilage looks like this. It provides elastic support, like we would guess from the name. This is what you have on the outside of your ear. The epiglottis is the little flap in your throat that keeps you from inhaling water or food when you're eating. It's a tube, it's a flap that covers your windpipe when you're swallowing. Eustachian canal is in your ear also. So this gives support. It always has this thing called a perichondrium, which is like the outer layer of the cartilage. Fibrocartilage has lots of parallel fibers. These white spots are lacunae, pink spots are the cells. There's never going to be a perichondrium here. Fibrocartilage function resists compression and absorbs shock. So this you'll find in the intervertebral discs. So these are the discs in between each of your vertebrae. And this fibrocartilage allows you to do things like jump, and it prevents the 2 bones in your back from hitting each other. Cartilage grows in one of 2 ways. It can grow interstitially, which is increasing in length, or it can grow appositionally, which is increase in width. And we'll go through each of these on their own. So interstitial growth, this is growing in length here. The first step is the chondrocytes are stimulated to divide. So they divide into two chondrocytes, but they're in that one lacunae, the one hole here. From there, they start to build their own cartilage, and then they get pushed away from each other, and they have their own lacuna. And now we call each of these chondrocytes. From here, the cartilage continues to grow internally, and the chondrocytes start to produce more matrix. Apositional growth, we start here. The stem cells in the outside layer, in the perichondrium, start to divide, and then they start to differentiate into chondroblasts, and they're sitting on the outside of old cartilage. They start building cartilage on the outside here. They start to push apart from each other, and they then become chondrocytes. They continue to grow at outside as chondrocytes, and they keep producing more matrix. So we'll talk about bone now. There are two different types of bone. There's compact bone and spongy bone. So when we talk about bone, it is just any other tissue. Just the connective tissue is hard because minerals get deposited. That process of hardening is called mineralization, calcification, or ossification. All of those terms refer to the same thing. So when you hear someone say bone, they can be talking about the tissue itself, or they can be talking about the organ, so including all the cartilage and blood with it. And then again, these are your prefixes. Some functions of the skeletal system. Obviously support, it's what's holding up your body. Protection, so like your skull is protecting your brain. Your sternum protects your heart. The vertebrae protect your spinal cords, etc. Skeletal system allows for movement, so there's attachment sites for muscles, and that allows for movement to happen. And then these last three are the ones that people usually forget about. So hemopoiesis or hematopoiesis is the blood cell formation. So inside there's a space called the marrow cavity. This is where your red blood cells are being formed. So hemo or hemato means blood, and poiesis is like creation. Your bones act as a storage for calcium, phosphate, sodium, and potassium. They store these ions, which are really important in other parts of the body. So for example, calcium is really important in muscle contractions, so we need to make sure that our body is very tightly regulating calcium. So if there's too much calcium in the blood, it just gets deposited into the bone. If there's not enough calcium in the blood, your body just takes it from the bone to use it. We'll talk about that more later on. And then energy storage, this one's very often missed. The bones have adipose tissue, which is fat, in their marrow cavity, so we call it yellow marrow. We can classify bones based on their shapes. So long bones are longer than they are wide. They look like pencils. These are your radius, your ulna, metacarpals, phalanges, like any long bone. This is your arm and your fingers. Short bones are like little cube-shaped bones. These are like bones in your wrist or your foot. Flat bones, like your sternum or your breastbone. Irregular bones are shaped really weirdly. Like your vertebrae are shaped weirdly. Some of the bones in the face are really weird looking. And then sesamoid bones are small little bones that develop within your tendons. So these, some people don't have any, some people have a lot. It kind of just depends on the individual. So you can see them here. These are flat bones. This is your sternum. Long bones like in your leg. Sesamoid bones like your patella. So everyone has this, but others might develop too. Short bones, this is in your foot. And then irregular bones that just look weird. Here's a little table for you. I would expect you to be able to look at a picture of a bone and tell me how it is classified. I get that you guys don't know all the anatomy yet, so you don't know all the names of the bones yet, but you should be able to know, like, if it's a long bone, a short bone, irregular, flat, or sesamoid. Okay, so the long bone itself has different anatomy. So the diaphysis is going to be the region here. This is the shaft of the bone. And then the epiphysis is the end of the bone on either end. Okay, so we have a proximal epiphysis. This is the head of your humerus, goes right into your shoulder. And then this is the distal epiphysis. This is right by your elbow. In between the shaft and the end is what we call the metaphysis. And this is where your growth plates are. So epiphyseal plates are what you guys probably know as growth plates. This is the site of elongation of the bone during your growth spurts. Inside the bone, there's a cavity called the medullary cavity. This is where your bone marrow is. It's soft tissue in there. So we think of bones as being rock solid, but they actually have like a hollow part that has bone marrow. 3 different types of bone marrow. We'll go through each of them. So red bone marrow is hematopoietic. It is producing red blood cells. This you find in almost every bone in kids, but in adults we don't need to be producing as much red blood cells, so we just have it in more of the axial skeleton, the core here. So you can find it lots in the hips, some in the sternum, ribs, and the vertebrae. Individuals that need a bone marrow biopsy will usually be done here in the ilium on the hip. So yellow bone marrow is adipose. It is no longer producing blood, but something really cool. If you get anemic, so you don't have enough red blood cells, your yellow bone marrow can convert back to red bone marrow to start creating more blood cells, which I think is really cool. Gelatinous bone marrow is not very useful. It's kind of just filling that void in elderly individuals. It's just kind of jelly. So this is an x-ray of a kid's hand. You can see here, if we zoom in on the x-ray, oops, maybe not. If we look at the x-ray, you can see the diaphysis here, and then you can see the epiphysis here, and then you can see this black line. That's the epiphyseal plate or the growth plate. It's not bone yet, so on an x-ray it looks like a black line. This is where there's cartilage. That's the hyaline cartilage. That is where bone elongation will happen. In an adult, if you looked at the same x-ray, there would just be a line here. This indicates to us that this child is still growing because there's still that space there. At the end of the bone, we have that articular cartilage. It's hyaline cartilage. It covers the epiphysis, the end of the bone, and it serves to reduce friction and absorb shock, like we said earlier. And I will pick up with these layers on the next video.